Thank you so much. This morning, again, I think is really an incredible, enriching experience, and the questions, I think it just highlights how knowledgeable patients are. And again, if anything, this organization has really given you guys some serious street cred in terms of my perspective and what's understandable and how involved you can be with your doctors. So that is the bar that we want to set. And we'll just wait for the other people in the hallway. Yes. You don't have to. We were wondering if you were going to take your seat. So let's get started with the second portion of the morning. It's my honor to introduce to you to Dr. Shelley Johns. Dr. Johns is a great friend of mine. I've known her since my entire time at IU, I feel. She has been a tremendous advocate for this organization from the get-go as well. She was a very important speaker and talked about this topic when we had our first meeting in 2015. That information and how we've looked at mindfulness has only snowballed from there as well. So if you'll join me in welcoming Dr. Shelley Johns.
So let me tell you first about my biases, right? Because every presenter has, their own perspective and their own bias. And so I always like to come clean with mine from the beginning. So my bias comes from the fact that I've lived with an autoimmune disease myself for almost 50 years. It's a different disease than many people in this room have. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was a little girl. And so I've got pancreatic issues, and that's kind of close to the liver, so I feel like we're all kind of in the same family. We're just cousins, right? Okay, so my disease is one that is similar to, but then very, very different from the disease that you all may have. My disease, like yours, is very inconvenient and very unwanted, right? We all share that. My disease is also expensive. How about you, right? Yep, and my disease is very unpredictable. Like I never really know for sure what's going to be happening with this. Is your disease a little unpredictable? Oh, yeah, sure. Well, you know what? Maybe we have a lot more in common than we thought. My disease also has a lot of fatigue with it. How about you? All right, okay. So the reason why I bring this up is because I want you to know that I do not have a felt sense of what your life is like. I don't. But I do have at least a lot of personal compassion because I have lived with an unwanted disease for a long time. The reason why I got into mindfulness, which we'll talk more about here in just a moment, is because in 1992 I had a very serious complication of my diabetes that I lost my vision, and then I had to endure some very painful eye surgeries that I had to stay awake and alert for. And the other trick of this, I had to sit perfectly and utterly still without movement for about an hour during pain when they were, kind of shoving needles in my eyes, so to speak. Imagine, and the doctor was, as kind as the doctor could be, but said, it is essential that you sit perfectly still for the hour. Like, are you feeling me on this? Like a needle is coming into your eyeball, I'm just saying. But you have to sit perfectly still. And so I needed to very quickly find ways to be at peace with what's here, right? Unwanted, painful procedure. And so I very quickly turned to all the resources in my environment and was turned on to something called mindfulness meditation. Well, I'm a young woman and I had never meditated before, but I thought, I'm up for anything if it's going to help. And so I, through some very fast practice, was able to sit perfectly and utterly still for these 10 hours of painful medical procedures. And I'm here, I can see you all. I can see your beautiful smile. I can see, right, yeah, thank you. But that's why I got really into this very quickly, and then I was, starting graduate school, to get my doctorate in psychology the next year, and it's been kind of the center of my life for, 25 years. And I'm beeping because my disease is so unpredictable, so give me just a minute so I can stop beeping, because this is telling me that my diabetes is doing something that I did not want it to do. Okay, we're back in the game. So I promise you I did not plan for that to happen. So let me, so you know kind of what my bias is, right? So I believe in this practice very much, but I've also been really impressed with the data to support it. There's been lots of research done in mindfulness for the last 25 years. I've been really impressed with the data, but this is not the only approach. Like if you're sitting there right now saying, I don't have any interest in meditating, then I say, right on, it's not for everybody, but I want to at least give you a felt sense of it today so that you can make an informed decision for yourself about whether there's anything to this for you and whether you want to try. So that's kind of where we're coming from. So you can see on the slide that the definition of mindfulness is the awareness that arises out of intentionally paying attention to this present moment with an attitude of openness, with an attitude of kindness, and then also in a very discerning way so that we can kind of make decisions about what our next step is going to be. So in order to have a felt sense of this, I invite you to try a practice with me. So I'm actually going to set everything down for just a moment and invite you, if you're willing, to allow your eyes to begin to close, if you're willing. If not, feel free to keep your eyes open, but maybe adopt a downward gaze where you're not looking directly into another person's eyes. And just first allowing yourself to notice the way the body feels as it's making contact with the chair beneath you. Notice any sense of touch or any sense of pressure beneath the legs. And then maybe allowing the focus of your attention to move down the legs, past the knee. Also noticing all the sounds available in the room, right, and outside the room. But again, focusing your attention, maybe on the knee area, noticing any sensations that may be there. And then bringing that attention all the way down into the feet. And seeing if it might be possible to give just a little bit of toe wiggle. Really waking those toes up, feeling them move inside your shoe, or if you're wearing sandals, just feeling the free movement of the toes as you wiggle them. And also noticing the way the feet feel within the shoes as they make contact with the floor if your feet happen to be flat on the floor. And this may or may not be the first time today that you've really kind of befriended your toes. But this is the first time I've even noticed having toes today. And as you feel ready, allowing that focus of attention now to begin coming up the legs one more time. Bringing the attention all the way back up to the pelvic area. And then moving the attention up into the lower abdomen. And just noticing for a moment the next breath that you take to see if there is any movement of the abdomen with the inhale or the exhale. If you happen to be breathing from the abdomen or from the diaphragm, which is a deeper form of breathing, then you'll notice that the abdomen kind of rises a bit with each inhale and then falls just a bit with each exhale. Very subtle. And if you happen to not be breathing from the diaphragm, breathing deeply, you may just notice some very slight rise and fall of the chest with each movement, with each inhale and exhale. And no need to change the breathing in any certain way. There's no place to get right now. We're just noticing the breath just as it naturally is. Excuse me. And also, as you notice thoughts that come into your field of awareness, just simply notice where the mind went, while gently and very kindly bringing the focus of attention right back to the next inhale or the next exhale, whichever you find. And if you're anything like me, you'll notice that the mind wanders a lot. The mind gets kind of caught and then you trail off somewhere else. And as soon as you notice that the mind has wandered, that actually is a form of mindfulness because you noticed. And then you can gently bring the focus of attention right back to the breath, always using the breath as an anchor to connect with this moment, in this room, right here, right now. And then allowing the focus of attention to move up into the shoulder area. And just really paying attention to where the shoulders are located in connection with the ears. I'm a little nervous right now, so I'm kind of wearing my shoulders for earrings, and I'm noticing that may not be necessary. So just seeing if it might be possible to bring any release to the shoulders to allow some ease there. And then doing the same thing perhaps with the jaw. Many of us carry a lot of stress and a lot of tension in the jaw. And just seeing if you can allow the jaw just to drop just a tiny bit, maybe creating some space between the lips. Then bringing the attention up to the forehead, noticing if there's any tension there, furrowed brow perhaps. And just seeing if there can be some softening and perhaps some release of any tension that is kind of wrinkling that forehead. And as we begin to close this mindfulness appetizer, bringing some really kind and compassionate attention to the top of the head that contains our brains, that directs all that we do, all that we think, and all that we are in this world. And as you slowly allow your eyes to begin to open, taking in the light of this room, and perhaps even looking across the table at the people who sit across from you, or looking a little bit to your left, or a little bit to your right. Just realizing that you're in a room with a lot of caring and compassionate people. So no matter what kind of crazy stuff is happening in this world that we live in that is so complicated, we've got some safety right here in this room, right? And it doesn't matter what your political affiliation is. We've got a lot of really nice, kind, interested, curious people in this room that brought us all together. And I'm really grateful for that. So my question for you is, what did you notice? I mean, we're not going to have time for everybody in the room to say anything, but what did you notice during that experience? Good, bad, or indifferent? What'd you notice? Peacefulness? Okay. Yeah. What else? Calm. Okay. A connection. Yeah. Well, and the other thing, so these are all really positive things that people noticed, and that's fantastic. That always, and so your $10 will be coming to you later for those who spoke. just kidding. These are not people that I know. But you may have been just the opposite of that. You may have had a very negative experience, and that happens sometimes too. Some people may have noticed, oh my God, I wasn't even noticing how much pain I had in my shoulders until you had me focus on it. Right? Anybody have a negative experience like that? Nobody who's admitting it? A couple people? Yeah, right. It happens. And that's the thing about mindfulness, is it's not about trying to get to a place of peace or positivity. That happens for a lot of people, and we love it when that happens. It happens for me a lot of times. But there are times where mindfulness practice is actually kind of a downer for me, in that I notice some things where it's like, oh my God, I didn't notice how sad I was feeling about something. Or I didn't notice how hurt I was feeling about something until I really dropped in and paid attention to what's here. But the good thing, good or bad, but the utilitarian piece of noticing things that are maybe not so positive is that it gives us an opportunity to decide what we're going to do next, or how we're going to proceed. So if you notice pain, that happens for a lot of people. Pain is a really important sign that something is amiss in our lives or in our bodies. And so that it can actually be a good, helpful thing to notice discomfort or pain, because then we can decide, is this just kind of a brief thing, or is this the sign of some bad stuff that's brewing in my body that needs to be attended to proactively and in a timely fashion so it doesn't get worse? Right? So I just always like to remind people that mindfulness is not about clearing the mind. Like a lot of you may have known, surely there's somebody in the room just like me who had 10,000 thoughts in that 10-minute period, right? It's like you're thinking about all kinds of things, like, oh my God, I got to remember to ask Craig this, or oh my God, I got to remember to figure out this, or oh my gosh, I got that bill due. Like if you notice those kinds of things, it's like thank your mind for that thought, because that's what our minds do. So mindfulness is not about clearing or quieting anything. It's not about getting to a place of peace, although that's a nice benefit if you get there. So I just wanted to make that clear before we go on. Is any of this making sense so far? Sure. A little bit? Okay. All right. So I've got another invitation for you. So this one, eyes wide open, because there are some people who never ever want to do closed eyes, like formal meditation, and that's cool. Because we can be mindful in our life, just as it is right here. You can be mindful of, the hot tea that you're drinking right now. You can be mindful of the person sitting next to you, the expressions on their face. You can be mindful of the flavors and the textures of the food that you're going to eat at lunch. So what I would like for you to do is look at this picture. And I would like for just a few people to popcorn out just some quick, one-word responses. What do you notice in this picture?
It should smell good there.
Okay. Well, that's a really interesting one, so I love that. But that is not what you're actually seeing in this picture. That is a story that your mind is giving you based on a past experience that you've probably had, right? Yeah. So, and I'm not saying that to pick on anybody at all, but it's like, if the question is, what do you see, we bring in all sorts of other stuff. And it's like, I bet we do that in our lives too. Like we see we see the way a person is looking at us, and then we create all sorts of story about it that may or may not be true. Like I could be giving you like a really kind of mean expression, right? Like that. And you might think, oh my God, she doesn't like me, or she doesn't approve of what I'm doing. And it could just be, I've got gas and I'm afraid that I'm gonna make sounds, Right, yeah, exactly. So you just don't know. Oftentimes we don't know. We make decisions about what something means, what we think we see. We jump to conclusions a lot of times, and it gets us into trouble. That's not very mindful. So if we can be really fully present in the moment without bringing in story about what may or may not be motivating or happening, it can actually simplify our lives quite a bit, and it keeps us a little bit more emotionally regulated too. So somebody else, what do you see? What do your eyes see in this picture? Sunrise or sunset? I heard both, right? It's hard to know. Right? I mean, I can tell you on Google Images where I swiped this, it says it's a sunset or a sunrise. It said it was a sunrise, but it's hard to know, right? Yeah, so again, our mind kind of gave us a story. We assumed sunrise or we assumed sunset based on others that we've seen. So what else do you see in this picture? Purple. Yeah. Sky. Right. Okay, so back to purple. A new day, yeah. So, but back to purple. Like, how many different shades of purple do you see in this? Like, there's a lot of different shades. And so my whole point in having you kind of reflect on this picture is how much of our lives are we really fully present for, right? So I was trying to think this morning, like, what's some like cool shtick that I could give to really hit this point home? So I've been alive now for, let me look and see. I got to look at my cheat sheet, sorry. Okay, so I've been alive today for 19,782 days. That's a lot of days, right? So January 5th, I'll have my 20,000th day of life on this earth. But when I really thought about how many sunrises have I actually seen and been really present for, not just like, you know, driving to work in a hurry, trying to drink my hot tea and like looking at the sunrise, like barely noticing it, but how many sunrises have I actually seen and experienced and savored in my life? And I think that it is 0.01% of my days. I've missed out on a lot of this in my life because I wasn't fully present for it. How many kisses from my husband or from my little boy, who is my precious heart sitting in the front row here, how many kisses from these precious people in my life or the precious people in yours have you missed because you were dialing it in, right? How many smiles from a stranger have you missed because you were walking head down because you were so focused on what you could or could not, you know, get away from, right? So the reason why I say this is because mindfulness, whether you're going to sit cross-legged on a chair and practice mindfulness formally, it's not required to do that, but just if we can just be fully present for our lives and really pay attention, I think our lives are going to be richer no matter what kind of unwanted crap we've got going on, right? All right, so let's move on here. Oh, I'm still beeping. Can y'all hear it? So there are 3 core elements of mindfulness. And you can see what these are on your slides. So, oh, I'm so sorry. Jeez. I do not need a doctor, I promise. But if I do, I'll be calling Craig. So, all right. So let's talk a little bit about these intentions of mindfulness. And you can actually begin to bring these into your life. So intention is about knowing why we are practicing. And I'm hoping to kind of plant some seeds for that with you today. Like, one of the reasons why you may want to practice is just so you can be more fully awake and alive to what's here in your life. Because there's a possibility that it may be a more enriching experience for you, and it may help increase the meaning, sense of purpose, or quality of your life. So that would be, you know, getting real clear on why we're practicing. And it's also, you know, kind of having our personal vision, you know, for why we're doing this, and sets the stage for what's possible. Oh, the other thing that I wanted to mention about the intention is because it's kind of like it sets the compass for our heart. It really helps, gives that direction, you know, to our heart. So attention means, you know, present moment awareness, you know, paying attention to this moment. And there was a recent study that was published back in 2010. It was a study out of Harvard. And what they did in this study, it was pretty amazing, actually. They had 5,000 adults from all over the world to download this app on their iPhones. And what this app did was it would send a text to the participants at random times throughout the waking hours of the day, and it would ask them 3 questions. It would ask them to rate their happiness in that moment on a scale of 0 to 100. It would ask them what they were actually doing when the text came. Were they, chopping onions? Were they, whatever they were doing, working? Were they, watching TV? Whatever. And then the other question is, what were you thinking about when the text came? Were you thinking about what you were doing, or were you thinking about something else? And if they said they were thinking about something else, then they asked them, were you thinking about something pleasant, something unpleasant, or something neutral? And what they found is that 47% of the time, the mind was wandering. It was not focused on what you were doing. And that may not seem like a big deal, but if you're driving in traffic, right, how many of us really paid attention to how we got here today? It's like I got here and it's like I was like, oh my God, I'm here. How'd I get here? We get on automatic pilot, right? So if you're doing something that doesn't really matter, like chopping onions, although that could matter, you could chop a finger or you could chop part of your finger off. But it's not a big deal if you're not doing something massively important. But if you're doing something important, like embracing your partner, like listening to your boss or your coworker, whatever we're doing, it really helps if we can be fully present for it. And then what they found, or the quote that I loved in this paper, is the human mind is a wandering mind, naturally so, and the wandering mind is actually an unhappy mind. Because what they found is that when the mind was wandering, more often than not, it was on an unpleasant thought. And it's that's what we do to ourselves. So, and then the last part, and this is not me in this slide, I promise you, in case you're like, is that her, 25 years ago? It's not. So, but anyway, the attitude is about, realizing that whatever we practice in this life is actually, it becomes stronger. The more we do something, the more you ride a bike, the better you get at it. And so if you're practicing a lot of, projecting about things that, how we were kind of seeing things in that picture that weren't really there necessarily, if you spend a lot of time practicing what you think other people are motivated by or what you think they're thinking about you, you're going to get really good at that, and it's probably going to be a big source of unhappiness in your life. And so what I encourage is to think about how you're going to practice mindfulness in your life, even if it's informal practice where you're just paying attention to what people say. But try to bring an attitude of acceptance, an attitude of openness, an attitude of non-striving, it's not always about where we're trying to get, right? Sometimes it can be, let's just be here now. And also an attitude of curiosity, kindness, care, gentleness, and compassion. Imagine the world that we would have if we were all just a little bit more compassionate with ourselves and each other. And the other thing I know about myself, I am so extremely compassionate when it comes to the patients that I care for in clinic. I'm a clinical health psychologist. I work in palliative care, usually with cancer patients who are dying. I'm exceedingly compassionate with all of them, but man, I beat the shit out of myself a lot, right? I'm the biggest judge, the biggest, harshest critic of my own self, of my appearance, of my speech, and it's can I not just be an equal opportunity compassion giver? Can I give as good to myself as I give in clinic? I've got an opportunity here, and so do you. Right? Because you, we all deserve compassion and respect. But we got to start at home first. So here's the last mindfulness exercise I have for you for today. Oh my gosh, and we're over time, so I promise this is it. So I would like for you all to invite you, if you're willing, to hold up a finger with this in the background. Hold up one finger. And I want you to, but it's got to be where you can look at your finger. Okay, so I want you to, right now, I want you to choose your focus to be on your finger. All right? So I want you to really look at that finger. I want you to look at the skin color. I want you to look at the shape of your nail bed. I encourage you to look at any wrinkles that you see on the finger where it naturally bends. And just look at the shape and the size of that finger, really, really noticing in a way that maybe you never have before. Now see if it might be possible for you to shift your focus of attention. Keep your finger right there, but now you're going to take the focus, your eyes are going to focus on what you see in this picture behind you. Like really, really noticing the colors, noticing the people, noticing the way the sun is shining on those green trees, noticing what's reflected in that one building that kind of looks like a mirror. And now see if you can shift your focus one more time right back to your finger, really noticing the folds of the skin, noticing the cuticle of that nail. And then shift your focus back where the finger's going to blur a little bit, where you can see this picture in front of you, really looking at the people and the cars and what's happening in the picture. Okay, and then you can allow your finger to drop. Thank you for that. So what you may have noticed there is that you have the ability to shift focus at will, right? Cool thing to notice, right? Because there are times where we really need to focus on the foreground in our lives. We really need to focus on what's here right now. There are other times where we need to be a little bit more, take a different perspective, where we need to look at the big picture of our lives. And it's really, really helpful if we go back to the original definition of mindfulness, where we talked about, being mindful and taking that attitude of discernment. It's good to discern or to know when the finger should be the focus or when the whole room should be the focus, when you need to bring it in or when you need to broaden. And knowing that we have that choice in how we respond to things can be a really helpful thing. And mindfulness gives us that opportunity to pause, kind of relax, and notice what's here so that we can decide what we do next. So, does this make sense? Okay, all right. And if you're interested in any more of this and even more beyond just mindfulness, we have a workshop tomorrow, the Cultivating Mindful Resilience workshop. You are invited to come. I think Craig will let you know if we're already full. But anyway, I just wanted to thank you so much for your attention and your open-hearted curiosity in this today. I think we're out of time for questions, but I can stick around for a little while. Thank you.